All right, so today's episode is a special one because I'm literally interviewing a guy that is known as being the godfather of attraction marketing. And I'm not even kidding when I say that. So, this is an incredible conversation. We go in a bunch of different directions. And if you're wondering who this guy is, well, let's get into the episode. Mr. Mike Dillard, brother, what's happening, man?
Todd, good to be here, man. It's been a while.
Oh, yeah, it's been a long time since I've actually seen you physically in person. I can't even remember the last time that was. Probably I think maybe over a decade. It's been a bit.
Yeah, we both had hair. At least I did.
Oh, yeah, I used to have hair too, and I gave it to both of my kids. They've got beautiful long curls. And yeah, and I don't know, mine's like seems to be coming on my back and my ears these days. So but well, so
Mm.
cool to get you on here with me and my audience. And this is going to be a little different interview, a little different chat that I normally do. Most of the time I'm talking to network marketers, top leaders, sometimes owners, and we met through the network marketing profession. So I guess we'll kind of start there. Man, I mean, how many years has it been, dude? Like 25? It's got to be like more than
2000.
25 years.
Uh, I want to say you and Mark Weiser were my first two mentors, and that was around and Stu Brody, the three of y'all. That was around 2002, 2001,
Wow.
2002, right after I graduated college in 2001.
Wow. Oh, so
Yeah.
you were just a young buck. I guess I was too. I mean, I started when I was 22 and the pro step days, man. It's so funny. I
Yeah.
tell the Mark Weiser story. In fact, you guys in my audience, like you've heard the Mark Weiser story many, many times. But so first of all, Mike and I go back obviously a long, long ways. We met in the network marketing profession. In Pro Step was a company that we got introduced to one another. And for those of you, though, here's a big surprise for all of you, and I would say that probably none of you actually know this, and you will now. You know the term attraction marketing that's used so widely around the internet and with network marketers. Well, this guy right here is actually the godfather of attraction marketing, and I'm not even kidding when I say that. So in fact, let's just start there for a second because people are like, "What are you talking about? How could this guy be the godfather of attraction marketing?" So let's just start there for a second.
Yeah. Yeah, I started my pursuits of network marketing in college. And so that was the late 90s, 96 to 2000, 2001. And I was horrible at it. I didn't make a dollar for my first 5 years. I wanna say I changed companies every 6 to 9 months, trying to figure out something that worked. And this is back before social media. This is back before ebooks. This is back before YouTube or any of that stuff. So it was all about cold calling people on the phone, dropping sizzle cards in hotel rooms and parking lots, and holding hotel meetings, and going door to door. And so that's what I was doing in college. Is I was going door to door selling Alpine air purifiers and trying to do
Oh
all that
yeah.
stuff and prepaid legal, and I sucked at it. I was a massive introvert. I was super shy. I didn't have a lot of self-confidence at the time. And yet I wanted financial freedom, and I wanted to be an entrepreneur more than those fears, would get in the way, basically. So I would begrudgingly continue my pursuits, but like most people, I continually sought after opportunities and marketing strategies, if you will, in network marketing that would allow me to make money and build a business without actually having to talk to anyone or build a business. um, it's easy to fall into that dream, but it is what it is. So eventually, yeah, I was 5 or 6 years into the industry. I graduated at this point, still wasn't making any money, still hadn't had a lot of success. You taught me how to talk to people on the phone finally and sponsor folks, and along with Mark. And I reached a breaking point where I was like, okay, I'm now out of college. I'm waiting tables. This hasn't worked out for me. And if I quit, then I've just wasted this previous 6 years of my life. And I don't know what I'm going to do if I end up quitting. Or is there a way for me to make this industry work for me in a way that I can succeed at? And so that's the question that I asked myself that really changed everything. And I asked myself, if I could build a business, what would be fun for me and what would I be successful at? And I said, I would love to be able to build a network marketing business where I didn't have to call anybody. I didn't have to chase after anybody. I didn't have to convince somebody to buy anything. I wish that I could just have 20 people a day email me or call me who've already gone through all of the information, who already knew all about the business and the products, and they were just ready to get started. They might have a question or two, but ultimately they were already sold and they wanted to join the business or become a customer. And if I can figure out how to do that, that would be fun. And so that's where I started. And it eventually led me down the path of direct response marketing. Dan Kennedy, David Ogilvy, all of these direct response legends, because I realized that, hey, these guys are selling hundreds of millions of dollars worth of products every day on infomercials, in direct response ads in newspapers and magazines, and they're not having to talk to a single person. They're literally putting out these advertisements and people are sending them money. And I was like, how could that be applied to the network marketing industry? Because if I could do that, that would be amazing. And around the same time, I'm going through Eben Pagan's dating stuff. I'm learning
Oh,
about
yeah.
attraction. I'm learning about human
Yeah.
dynamics and what causes that stuff. And Eben's applying dating psychology and attraction psychology to direct response as well. So we were both kind of going down and figuring out the same thing at the same time. And that's eventually turned into attraction marketing. And I figured out how to use Google AdWords. And this is back in the days before ClickFunnels, where if you wanted to build internet marketing for network marketing was in its infancy. If you wanted to build a capture page, if you even knew what that was back then, you had to hand code it in Dreamweaver, which is what I was doing.
Wow.
Um, so started to learn how to do internet marketing. I combined that with Google AdWords because Google AdWords just came out. It was the first online ad platform that, a person like me could set up from home. And I combined it with what I was learning from Eben and what I was learning from direct response. And I figured out how to attract my ideal prospect to me, as I put it, with credit card in hand, ready to buy. So I learned how to write a capture page that converted, paid traffic and cold traffic from the internet into leads. I learned how to turn those leads into customers and distributors just by reading a sales letter. And I learned how to get those people to call me up or send their credit card information to sign up and join my organization. And I took that initial problem that I had and the question that I brought to that problem into a solution, and that became magnetic sponsoring, which is, what this was called basically, and turned that into a book for my team as a training manual to teach them how to do what I was doing, and then eventually turned it into a generic book that was brought out to the industry. And it was fascinating because it was very controversial. A
Yeah.
lot of people were not fans of mine when that book came out. Randy Gage was not a fan of mine, even though I looked up to him as a mentor and modeled a lot of what I did after what I learned from him. Art Jonak was a fan. Thankfully, he had me come and speak on stage about it. But it was fascinating because the book called into question how the industry had built businesses for decades before the internet. And I was one of the first guys building a network marketing business online without using any of the old school strategies. And I think that was a big threat to those people in those organizations. But the new folks who were like me and struggling, who weren't built for that world, embraced it, and it created a new way to build a network marketing business. So
Dude, that's so wild. Um, I remember the beginnings of that, and that thing did spread all throughout the entire network marketing community, and it was like literally it was so guys, I wasn't joking when I said this is the godfather of attraction marketing. The you just open the doors for a different way of thinking. And it's interesting. Anytime somebody does something that's different, I mean, we've always done it this way. People are first. I mean, I think there's a process people go through, but like they're threatened by it. Like, wait a second, what are you doing? We don't do it this way. And now, clearly, obviously, in today's market, I would say it's mostly embraced, but there's still, I mean, how many years, 20 something years later, there's still people that frown on attraction marketing. And I think it's kind of crazy, but they still do. So, um, yeah, that's so wild, man. What, so you had a successful career in network marketing. You're no longer really in the network marketing space. You've done a lot of different business. I mean, I don't even, because we haven't been like regularly connected. You and I
Yeah.
talk every now and then, but like, what have you been doing? Like, what's up? Like,
Yeah.
you've had multiple companies that you've done outside the space. So like, what's going on with you?
Um, After I launched Magnetic and I figured it out, basically, with your help and Mark's help and Stu's help, I figured out how to sponsor people, generate leads using what I'd taught myself on the internet marketing side, built an organization, and then went to another company, built a second organization there, became the number one distributor in that, and and then built Magnetic Sponsoring into an eight-figure education company. So teaching people how to apply attraction marketing to their businesses, how to advertise online, generate leads online. That turned into a multi-million dollar a year education business. And so that went on for about 5 years. I want to say from 2004, 2005 to 2010. And at that point, I'm in my late 20s. I'm around 29, 30 years old. And I'd done everything that I had set out to do in network marketing my lifelong goal was to make 50 grand a month at some point down the road when I was getting my start. And at this point, I'm making 500 grand a month. I've built the number one distributorship in a business. I have nothing else to prove to anybody. I've said everything that I need to say, and I didn't have anything left to do. There was literally nothing left for me to do in that industry. And so after 5 or 6 years of that, I frankly got a little depressed and kind of sad or bored, but I didn't have anything to say to anyone. I had taught everything there was for me to teach, and that was it. So around that time, we had just gone through the crash of 2008. I'd watched a lot of people and my folks, lose 50% of their retirement, and they didn't have any answers. There was a lot of confusion. And at this point, I'm making millions of dollars in my career. I'm doing stupid shit with my money that someone in their 20s does when they're making millions of dollars a year and they're single. And I wasn't investing it because I didn't know how to invest it. I grew up in a hardworking middle class family with, my dad was in sales, my mom was a teacher, and they did a phenomenal job of raising us, but they weren't millionaires at the time, and they didn't have they couldn't relate to me, and I couldn't relate to them when it came to money. And so I was quite lost when it came to that topic. And 2008 inspired me to take a deep dive to figure out, all right, I know that these people just lost a ton of money, uh, you know, investing with retail financial advisors. I don't want to do that. But what do rich entrepreneurs actually do with their money? How do they protect it and how do they grow it? And so I got very curious and I started literally going to the local bookstore, People's Bookstore here in Austin. And I'd go on the finance side and I would just start reading books on finance and investing. And every book that I saw was from basically, it was for the previous 10 to 20 years. If you had done what those books had said and you just went through 2008, you just lost your shirt. And so I got frustrated there because I'm like, this is old stuff that doesn't apply to today's world. Now that, we have digital marketplaces and online businesses and all of that stuff. So I wanted questions and I didn't have the answers. So I decided to, as I always do, turn my biggest challenges into my next business. Um, I decided to launch a private membership site called the Elevation Group.
Oh,
And all I wanted
Elevation
to do,
Group. Yeah.
yeah, all I'm having a child at this time. So my wife at the time was pregnant and I'm about to be a father. I don't want to work a lot. I want to work as little as I can, and I want to have a business built around financial education, but I'm not the expert. So The business model was pretty simple. I was going to come on and interview someone who was a wealthy entrepreneur once a month on camera, and that was it. And I sold access to that for $97 a month or $597 a year. And I would bring someone on like a Tom Wheelwright or Robert Kiyosaki or something like that to just talk to them about what they do with their money. And we launched that business, or I launched that business in, I want to say, December of 2010, to the email list that I'd built up in Magnetic. And we did $3.2 million in sales in 7 days. And when I
Wow.
say we, it was, I guess, just me because I was the only person in that business at the time. But yeah, we had, gosh, I think like 10,000 people signed up in the first week. It must have been less than that. It was thousands and thousands of people, but it was $3.2 million in revenue in 7 days. And it
Pretty good start.
was a pretty good start. And that turned into an eight-figure business over the next year, 50,000 customers. It took on a zeitgeist of its own. I wrote a webinar that sold that product. Russell Brunson took that webinar and talked about it in his copywriting book that he wrote years later. Um, and unfortunately, about 18 months into that business, we ended up interviewing somebody who would later turn out to be a con man and who defrauded myself and about 1,000 of our other customers who ended up investing with this guy. And that blew up the business overnight. So I went from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows, literally within the scope of 24 hours. And that basically broke me mentally and emotionally for a good 4 years after that, 3, 4 years after that. That was in 2012. Spent my time trying to put this guy behind bars, which he eventually was found guilty and at least was brought to justice in that regard. But having to go through that in a public way, having your reputation, called into question around that based on the actions of somebody else was not something I would wish for anybody. And that, yeah, a lot of time in depression. The business lost 90% of its revenue in the course of a month. Legal bills went to $50,000, $60,000 a month. And I just really spent the next 3 years in survival mode, was going through divorce now at that time as well. And didn't know what I was going to do until 2015 when I went with a friend to Tony Robbins' Date with Destiny for a week, and that finally popped me out of that depression, and basically gave myself permission to let that go and to move on and move forward. And that's when Self-Made Man and the Self-Made Man podcast started, and my hydroponic company started, and all of that. So, yeah.
Yeah, Tony's pretty good about changing people's states, man. It's pretty wild, and especially going to
Yeah.
date with Destiny. So, wow, dude. I had it's like I haven't even heard the words elevation group for years, and I definitely remember you launching and doing that. Um, so coming out of yeah, and then the hydroponic thing. Tell me about that real quick. Is that company still around, or what did you do? What did you end up doing with that? And tell the listeners like what that whole thing was all about. It's pretty fascinating, actually.
Yeah, sure. So coming out of that event, um, I wanted to do something in the physical product world. At this point, I've built two eight-figure businesses in the digital education realm, two different industries, and kind of the same itch that I had in network marketing. I was like, okay, I've done the online marketing thing now. I've taught other people how to do that. I need a new challenge and want to make a bigger impact on the world, frankly. And so I wanted to do something with physical products. And I literally lived across the street at the time from the Whole Foods corporate headquarters in downtown Austin, Texas. So there was the high rise that I was living in, and across the street is Whole Foods. So I was there every day buying produce for, green juices and things like that. And when you go to Whole Foods every day, and when you're specifically juicing, you realize very quickly that you have to be somewhat wealthy to eat poison that's not, excuse me,
Whole
to eat
paycheck.
food that's not covered in poison.
Yeah, whole
That,
paycheck.
yeah, that to me
Yeah.
was ridiculous. Like, unless you're rich, you're eating food that's covered in poison, and I thought that was bullshit. And so at the same time, I'm reading Peter Diamandis's first big book on the decentralization of, the economy. We're starting to see all of these websites and services come out that are decentralizing all kinds of industries from Uber to Odesk to 99 Designs and everything in between, Etsy and all of that stuff. And the question was, why do I have to be rich to eat food that's healthy for me? Why can't everybody have that? And then why hasn't anybody decentralized the agricultural industry yet? Why hasn't anybody decentralized farming? And so I decide to take a deep dive into that. And I get on Amazon and I buy every book that I can find on hydroponics and these kinds of different topics. I've never had a garden in my life at that point. and and then I start buying all of the existing systems that were out there, Tower Garden and all of these other desktop little microgreen things for your kitchen countertop. And I start looking at these and I get interested and I'm like, cool, there are systems out there that exist right now that you can use in your home to grow healthy organic produce and to do it for a lot less money than you'd have to buy it for at the store. And after using them for a couple of months, they are a giant pain in the ass. If you've ever used a tower garden, it sucks. You have these giant lights. If you're in a high rise like I am, you don't have a backyard to put it in. It's in your living room. And you have these four vertical lights that are lighting up your entire house, all day like a greenhouse. You have to keep refilling the thing with water. You have to constantly rebalance the pH and add different nutrients to it and all of this stuff. And it's kind of like taking care of a complicated fish aquarium, but you're having to do it every 48 to 72 hours.
Wow.
So that's why the agricultural industry hasn't been decentralized because it takes a lot of work and dedication. So the question I asked was, is there a way to make this easy and fully automated? Can I automate this entire process? And that became the goal. Because if I could automate this and turn this into an appliance like a refrigerator that did all of the work for you, well, then awesome. Then we can, after doing all of the math and research, you could literally grow enough produce to feed a person for a full month for 90 to 95% less water reduction, right? You're not wasting water in runoff and evaporation, 100% reduction in pesticide use and chemical use. And then it was around a 90% something reduction in average cost because you're removing the entire supply chain from the farmer to the farmer's diesel fuel, to the tractor, to the insurance policies, to the 18-wheelers, to the warehouses and distribution and all of that. It all gets deleted and it starts and ends in your living room. All you're doing at that point is you're paying for the seed pod and nutrient solution and electricity for the lights, and that was it. So I hired a company in Silicon Valley that had designed a lot of high-end electronics products that were very similar to Apple. And that was my concept. If this thing was going to be in your house, I wanted it to look like an appliance and like a piece of art that you would want on display. And I spent the next 3 years literally designing and developing that product with them until we built it. And if you want, Todd, I'll send you some images of it so you can show people the prototype in the living room. And it was one of the coolest experiences I had in my life, getting to fly out to Silicon Valley and invent something that had literally never been invented before. And what we built was the world's first fully automated hydroponic farm for home consumer use, meaning
Wow.
the lights were automated. We had a Wi-Fi antenna, a Wi-Fi controller, so we synced the lights to follow the circadian rhythm, frankly, of the sun. So as the sun went down, the lights went down. As the sun came up, the lights came on. We had everything oriented vertically, so the lights are facing down instead of out, so it's not filling up your house with light pollution. We had in the base was a water reservoir tank with pH sensors and nutrient sensors. And so you would have a bottle of pH up and pH down, and a bottle of nutrient A, nutrient B. And so it would robotically keep itself in equilibrium and dose out those things as they needed and use sensors to detect what was in the water. And all we really had to do is run a hose line, which we created the connection for. You'd run a plumbing hose line like you'd have under your sink to the unit, and then it would keep it full of water and had a water level sensor and all of that. So this thing literally ran itself through an app that we built out as well. And so all you would do is drop in these little seed pods, which is kind of our revenue model, which a company called Click and Grow has now. You would just like a Keurig cup, you'd buy the seed for the produce you want and drop it in, and it would start growing. And so we built it over the course of 2 to 3 years to a final format. But looking back in time, it was a really big mistake financially because I funded all of that myself. And what originally was quoted as a $400,000 to $500,000 development, for the prototype turned into 2 to 3 million 2 to 3 years later. And if you think about $3 million in free cash flow to literally pay to a developer, if you're at a 33% profit margin, that means I had to make $10 million to just pay that $3 million bill, right? So this was significantly more expensive than anticipated, and I didn't want to raise money for it because I didn't want the pressure that would come along from having to manage somebody else's money. So we got the thing working. It's growing food in my living room, and we're taking photos. We're starting to work on website development. It gets significantly more complicated because now I'm having to think about service. This thing is the size of a refrigerator. Its dimensions were built to fit into a standard door frame in the typical home in America, because that would be the size constraint that it would have to pass through is a door frame. And now we're thinking about service and shipping. Well, what if this thing breaks? You can't ship it back. It weighs hundreds of pounds, right? So now I've got to set up a nationwide service network, like through an appliance company and all of this. So it continues to get significantly more complicated. But around this time, my building floods, the high-rise building that I'm in. We have this torrential rainstorm in Austin that lasted a week, and like literally the entire city shut down. You couldn't drive through the streets. We are in a brand new high-rise that had a swimming pool on the 35th floor, whatever it was, on the roof, and that flooded, and all the water came down all the elevator shafts and flooded the
Wow.
building. I had to carry my son on my shoulders, who was 3 or 4 or 5 at the time, up. I was on the 26th floor, so do the math, 52 flights of stairs up or
Oof.
down every time we wanted to leave the house. Um, but about this time, about 6 months later, I just felt a little click in the back of my head one day. And from that point forward, I couldn't physically fall asleep for almost a year. Within seven
At
days,
all?
now within 7 days, I hadn't had a single minute of sleep. Um, I didn't know what was wrong. My doc gave me a prescription for Xanax and Ambien, which I've never taken. I've never been a pharmaceutical guy. But you go 7 days without a single minute of sleep, and you start to feel your organs shut down. You start to get suicidal, and you start to die, basically. And that's where I was at. Anytime I would start to just close my eyes and get to that point of going unconscious, my heart rate would jump, my breath would jump. I'd get this giant adrenaline spike, and I would just be up again, no matter how hard I tried to get her to go to sleep or how tired I got. So even giving me Ambien and Xanax and taking a double dose of that, that would get me about 45 to 60 minutes of disassociation, but not sleep. So almost like a waking dream state where half of my brain felt like it was dreaming, but I was still self-aware and conscious of the fact that I was awake and I could perceive what was going on in the environment. So everything stopped at that point. I couldn't drive. I could barely leave the house. I would go out and experience extreme paranoia, like the buildings around me were going to collapse, just irrational fear. And my life went from developing that system to being in bed 23 hours out of 24 hours a day. Uh, and everything stopped. And
Wow, bro.
that lasted for over a year and a half. And the only reason I would say I'm even still alive is the fact that my friend Hal Elrod, who was going through stage 4 cancer at the time, suggested that I try a THC gummy, which he was taking for his chemo. I've never even done weed at this point in my life. And so he gave me a gummy,
I
and that
can't say
got
the
me,
same.
yeah, that got me, that got me 2 to 3 hours of sleep when I took that thing. And that saved my life because at that
Wow.
point, I could take one of those a night and at least get 3 hours of sleep, which was enough to not literally go insane or have my body shut down. Um, I went through every therapy you could think of: transcranial magnetic therapy, 9 ketamine IVs, MDMA therapy, Wachuma, uh, psychedelics, psilocybin, uh, EMDR therapy, and anything that anyone would bring up to me, I would try because this was going on for a year, year and a half at this point of not being able to physically fall asleep, uh, being in constant extreme paranoia. Every 5 to 15 seconds, I'd get a spike of adrenaline that would just go down my legs
Ooh.
24 hours a day, even if I'm just laying on the couch. And the scary part was that nobody had any idea what was wrong. And so I couldn't find any information from anybody on Google or YouTube about someone having the same kind of symptoms. Um, and just in a very dark, desperate, scary place for that 18-month period until I had lunch with my good friend JP Newman one day, and I just break down crying with him over this because at this point I'm now broke, believe it or not. I put all
Yeah.
of the
So
money I just
the
made into
hydroponic thing
Evergrow.
just you had to throw the hydroponic thing aside because it was like you're literally it sounds like you're fighting for your life.
It went
And
into all the money, all my chips went in on Evergrow, right? All of my
yeah,
savings. And then when that stopped and I couldn't work, I wasn't bringing in income anymore. But the bills, $50,000 a month and ex-spouse payments and child support and staff and all of that just kept coming in. Right now, medical bills, and that'll liquidate your savings and your investment portfolio very quickly over a year and a
yeah.
half. And so, just break down with him, telling him where I'm at, and he goes, "Have you ever been tested for toxic mold?" And I was like, "No, I don't even know what that is." So he
Wow.
suggested that, and I went and saw his doctor, Dr. Ann Shippey, in the next week or two. Went and took a urine test for mycotoxins. Got the results back a couple of weeks later, and it was the highest, basically, level the lab had ever seen. And they had called and asked her if my sample was accurate or if it had been contaminated or something. And so mycotoxins are the toxins that specific mold species like black mold give off, and we breathe them in. And a normal person, your body has the ability to remove those and methylate those out through your normal detox pathways. It turns out 1 in 4 people don't have that gene, and I was one of them. And so my body did not have the ability to remove mycotoxins. And so what had ended up happening, looking back, is when the building flooded, it had started growing toxic mold in the AC ducts and in the
Uh-huh.
walls, and I was breathing this in on a daily basis. And it's like an air filter in your house that once it gets full, it just keeps piling in there. And my body was just accumulating it like a sponge, but it wasn't being removed. It was just more and more adding and adding and adding. And mycotoxins are a fat soluble toxin, they're a neurotoxin. So they end up getting stored in the brain. And so what happened with me is that all of those got stored in the brain to the point where they caused a physical injury, which was that click I felt one day from inflammation. And then my brain knew that something was seriously wrong, which is why it put me in fight or flight 24/7. It was like, we are under attack, we are dying, do something. But not knowing what was wrong, I had zero context because there's no pain involved, right? It's not like you break your arm and you can say, I've got a broken arm here. But it was still sending those signals 24/7, keeping me awake and trying to get me to resolve it. So I get the test results back. Uh, 0 to 5 is okay on the bar chart. Anything above 5 is in the red. You need to get it remedied. And the chart stopped at 50. My result was a number to the side that was 21,000.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So 50 was as high as it goes, and mine was 21,000, which is why the lab was wondering if the sample had been contaminated. But it wasn't.
Yeah.
That's how high my levels were. And so you can die from toxic mold, and I was at that place. Um, so thankfully we discovered what it was. I moved. I started a detox program, and that was in that Todd, that started in June of 2018 is when the click happened. And I am just now in the last 6 months here in September of 2025, finally back to having my brain back to full, not even full, but let's just say normal capacity where I've been able to work every day. So it was roughly a 6 to 7 year recovery process from the nervous system damage that that mold caused at such a high level. So lots of stuff that we can talk about from there because I learned a lot from it. It was the hardest thing I've ever been through and the most valuable. Completely changed every aspect of my life, many for the better. It was an unbelievably difficult curse and at the same time the biggest blessing I've ever had. So,
How a
you know,
blessing. Like,
what's
I
that?
mean, it sounds obviously awful. I mean, I knew a little bit about this, but not the depth. I mean, what's the blessing in all that?
When I wasn't a very religious person back then. I was young and focused on building my empire and trying to fulfill my mission in life. I believed in God, but it wasn't. I didn't have an active relationship with God. I wasn't in prayer every day. Um, and looking back now, I think God gets your attention in specific ways. And entrepreneurs are very freaking stubborn people. We have to be incredibly stubborn people to push through the shit that we push through in order to get the job done that we need to get done. And I'm a very, very stubborn individual, and I will go through massive levels of pain in order to accomplish whatever goal I have. And there's a saying that I came across during this process, which is feather, brick, semi. And it means God or your body will try to get your attention with a feather at first. And it could be your blood pressure's high, this stat's off, you're a little overweight, whatever it may be. But as an entrepreneur, we just shove that shit off or we numb it with alcohol or caffeine or your drug of choice, right? And then we just keep pushing on. And then you get hit with a brick if you don't listen to the feather. And that's when you might have some kind of a health scare of some kind. It's a little scary. It might be inconvenient, but it's not shaping your life in any dramatic way. And once again, as an entrepreneur, we just keep moving through that shit. And then you get run over by a semi. And that's what happened to me, where I wasn't paying attention to my body and the symptoms that I was getting leading up to that moment in time. I just kept pushing through it. And then I got run over. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't live through getting hit by a semi, and I'd lived through mine. But that was God, I believe, getting my attention and taking me through a period of forced change and forced evolution. And I think that's what I required because without being forced to change, I don't think I would have. So the way that I got through the challenges of the elevation group was literally through margaritas and queso. And it's kind of funny, but I kid you not, because at the bottom of my building was a Mexican restaurant, and I would drown my depression in frozen margaritas and a bowl of queso every night. I wasn't an alcoholic. I've never been an alcoholic. I don't have an addictive personality, thankfully. But nevertheless, if you drink 2 or 3 margaritas a night and 2 or 3 bowls of queso a night, that's going to have a really negative impact on your health.
Yeah.
Um, and so going through this experience, I had to completely change every aspect of my life. So I had to go 100% gluten free. I had to go 100% alcohol free. I had to go 100% sugar free. I had to go 100% caffeine free. And I went from caffeine and the things that I love to eat on a daily basis to having none of those. I went from racing cars on the weekend and shooting guns and having a fast-paced recreational lifestyle to literally not being able to walk down the street. I went from having a garage full of supercars that I love to drive to having none. I went from a bank account full of money to an account that had none. I went from being able to work on my business and my passion every day to being able to literally do nothing. And so it was the complete stripping of every aspect of my identity. And the hardest part of it was not the food, the diet, the social aspect of it, the passions, the money, or whatever. It was literally losing my identity because I got to a point where it's like if I can't learn, if I can't teach, if I can't contribute to this society, then what value does my life have? And that got to that existential kind of crisis moment through this process. And one day, I basically had to make a choice where it's either it doesn't have value, and there's no point in me being around anymore, or it does, and it does have value strictly from the aspect that God cared enough to create me and give me that life. And that's all that was necessary. And that if that was important for him, and if I was important to him, then that needed to be enough for me. And that was the decision that I made. So that started and going through the healing and recovery process over the next, the really in-depth daily part of this was about 4 years, going through therapy, going through 12 MDMA sessions, going through 9 ketamine IVs, going through psilocybin, really getting to know 3 5-MeO DMT sessions. For those of you who don't know that, it's literally going through the dying process. Um, you, it's an opportunity to dig through the deepest parts of your heart and your psyche. It's an opportunity to process and heal everything that ever needed to be healed, to forgive yourself for the things you need to forgive yourself for, and other people that you need to forgive. And it's a way to cleanse the body, the mind, and the soul and the spirit, and to reconnect with God. And so that's what I did for 5 years straight, every day. Um, yeah. So in that regard, it was a massive blessing because of the person that process turned me into. And without the difficulty or the forced aspect of such an extreme situation, I wouldn't have gone through that. I would have kept doing the internet marketing thing and building the businesses and ignoring my health and drinking 3 cups of coffee in the morning, turning my system off at night, racing cars on weekends. And I guarantee you, I would be dead today from a heart attack. I would not be here if that lifestyle of extreme stress and physical abuse, frankly, continued. So yeah, today, thankfully, now because of that, I met my wife. We have an incredible relationship, 5 6 years, and that's 100% a result of the relationship work that I was able to do for myself going through this process. Uh, and then, yeah, rediscovering God and having a relationship with Him spiritually was a huge piece that came out of this. And so, yeah, that's why I can say it's easily the biggest blessing that I've been through.
Wow,
So,
man.
yeah.
I'm kind of speechless. I mean, because we've had little snippets of conversations about this, but that's heavy. I mean, a lot of times people are like, "Oh, I got challenges." I mean, you went the depth of your challenges far exceeds anything I've had to deal with, and I mean, obviously, it had to happen for a reason because God most certainly got your attention, and you lived through the semi truck, which is a beautiful thing. I'm super grateful you're here. Um, in terms of like lessons that you've learned, like you're so good at like coming up. I mean, you've done multiple businesses that you've made a ton of money in. You've been stripped of everything almost your life, most certainly your finances as well. Um, and I know you've done a lot of study on money and people's relationships with money. I kind of want to segue into a conversation about that because the thing is funny. Like, I don't, well, actually, it's not funny, but people that I live, eat, and breathe in the network marketing space for the most part, and so many individuals are so terrible with money. And I understand, I get it. You haven't made money, you start making money, and it's like, got to prove to other people. And it's like, okay, if I have this car, then you're going to know I got cash. If I'm wearing this Rolex and I'm flashing my watch, I'm going to get your attention. I totally understand why people do that, especially in the network marketing space, because it's like that'll never work. And then when you've proven to yourself that it works, you kind of want to, I mean, it goes from beyond upgrading. I got to get new, I'll never forget like Mark Weezer one day calling me years ago. He's like, dude, he goes, I've had the same carpet for 17 years and I'd never been to his condo and he's like, it's bad. And I was like, bro, you know, he was asking me for my financial advice because he was super tight back then.
Yeah.
And, you know, getting a new TV or new carpets. And then people, you know, a lot of times they go well beyond that, which, you know, is fine to some extent, but then they end up overextending and go and live way beyond their means. So I want to get into kind of your thought process on, you know, I mean, including yourself, like what would you have done differently from a financial perspective? And what are some of the things that you've learned about relationships that people and you have had with money? Because I know you've done a lot of study on those subjects.
Yeah, what's fascinating is the really deep interpersonal work that I had to go through during this healing journey is what allowed me to see in a whole new light my lifelong relationship with money and everybody else's. And it became a fascinating subject matter for me because nobody has ever talked about what I figured out. Like Robert Kiyosaki didn't figure this out. Susie Orman, like you name it, nobody had ever talked about this before. And Dave Ramsey. And you can all look at these guys and you're like, okay, what Dave Ramsey and Robert Kiyosaki are teaching you work. And there it's incredibly simple. Like building wealth is incredibly simple, and you don't even have to make a lot of money to become a really wealthy person. It comes down to three things: investing consistently over a long period of time into real assets. That's all you have to do. And that's all either of them teaches. And you can go this just save money and be conservative route through Dave, or you can go through the buy assets with leverage route through Robert. It doesn't matter. They're both equally effective and they both work and they're both very easy and things that anybody can do. And so why do so many people still struggle with money when the answer has been in front of them for over 30 years and available in a $15 book? And so going through this process, I became aware that people's relationship with money is really driven by two different things: their neurochemical addictions and their subconscious programs. And these are the two aspects of money that nobody else had ever taught before, that I think are at the foundation of every individual's relationship with the subject matter. So looking back at my life, I was constantly in something that I call the make it, spend it, risk it cycle. And so I would make a lot of money and then I would either spend it on a Ferrari or a boat or whatever, or I would risk it on a new business venture like Evergrow, right? Putting $3 million into this hydroponic business. I did the same thing with Better Networker when I put $1 million into that and another $1 million in the Self-Made Man platform. So I had this pattern that I would do those things: make it, spend it, risk it. And then when you make it and you spend it, risk it, what do you have to do? Well, you have to make it all again. So what I became aware of was that I was not actually consciously pursuing these new ventures or consciously making these decisions, even though I thought I was. At the end of the day, what I was really doing was responding to a subconscious addiction to adrenaline. And I came out of the womb with an addiction to adrenaline, meaning by 4 years old, I was racing BMX bikes. Won the Texas State Championships for mountain biking and in college, like race cars for fun, right? Tactical shooting courses for shits and giggles. And then obviously became an entrepreneur, which is the ultimate form of risk taking when it comes to a career. And so all of a sudden I'm like, oh, interesting. I have just been living out and repeating a behavioral pattern based on an addiction to epinephrine or endorphins and adrenaline. And when life got easy or the business got easy, like it did in magnetic sponsoring and then it did in, Elevation Group, I got bored. And because the adrenaline was gone and money was good and the bank account was fat, then you will subconsciously create some kind of circumstance to blow that up so that your body can go back into a state of adrenaline. And that means, hey, I'm going to go start a new business. Or that means, wouldn't it be cool if we built this? Or if we pursued that? Or maybe I should put all of my money into crypto or, whatever. And so what became very apparent to me is that most entrepreneurs, and I'm just going to use the 80-20 Pareto principle here, 80% of entrepreneurs that I observe have this same dynamic of a high addiction to adrenaline, a high addiction to risk taking, and who have chosen a career path that feeds both of those. And when you apply that kind of mentality and neurochemical addiction to the money that you then make, then it goes to hell, right? It is necessary and required to have that mentality to start a business and grow it. But when you apply that same neurochemistry to the money that you make, that's when you end up investing in your buddy's startup company, in the hot new crypto asset, in the hot new penny stock, or whatever it may be. High risk, high reward behavior. This is why you see athletes go broke. This is why you see actors make hundreds of millions of dollars and go broke. This is why you see people who win the lottery go broke. It's all the same neurochemical addiction. And so that's what's going on for most entrepreneurs, not all of them. Then you run into the kind, I would say in the 20%, who are like Mark. So, or Dave Ramsey. And you could see Dave Ramsey, if you know his story, you can see this moment where he was in the high risk, high reward category. And then he had his bankruptcy, and then he became aware of his behavior pattern, and then he changed it. And then he had a different life. But ultimately, I call this an inverted dopamine response. And it means you get a dopamine reward whenever you spend money. And so when you're in a high risk career like we are, and your body needs a relief from that level of stress, it's going to seek out dopamine. That's your body's way to basically sterilize or negate high levels of cortisol and adrenaline, is through dopamine. The primary ways that we get dopamine today are through food, alcohol, or shopping, right? We satiate ourselves, we get a dopamine hit. We numb ourselves with alcohol, we get a dopamine hit, or we go buy something which, from a evolutionary perspective, is the equivalent of acquiring more resources, which we're genetically programmed to go do as men. And so we go spend money and we acquire more resources and we get a dopamine hit, and that feels good. And so we also live in a modern society that has trained us to go do those three things whenever we are stressed out. And so you watch TV or the internet or social media, you get super stressed out, and then your body wants dopamine. So it's go eat, go drink, go shop. And that gets patterned into your neurology. The more you do that, the more that gets wired into your brain's pathways, and then it becomes an unconscious pattern. So that's the inverted dopamine response, where you have an addiction to spending money in order to relieve the stress that you're going through. People who have a normalized dopamine response actually get stressed out when they spend money. And so this is a Warren Buffett or Mark Weiser or my buddy Justin Donald or a Dave Ramsey. So for them, they get dopamine by saving money. When they see their account grow, they make money and they keep it, that is pleasurable for them. They get a sense of safety and dopamine and reward. When they spend money, it causes a cortisol spike. It feels stressful. It feels bad. They don't want to do it. And ironically, you can guess the outcome for those two people just based on that neurochemical addiction. One's addicted to spending money. They're going to be broke, and they're going to be stuck in that pattern for the vast majority of their life, if not all of their life. No matter how much money they make, if you have an inverted dopamine response, the outcome for you is being broke by the time you're 60, 70 years old, and you can't make money anymore. If you have a normalized dopamine response, the end result for you is a giant investment portfolio and a very comfortable life, but maybe one that wasn't so exciting or not that fun or filled with different experiences that the other person had, like I would have had when I was buying my Ferraris and doing my shit, right? But that's the outcome, and that's largely determined by a neurochemical addiction that people are completely unaware that they have, because every one of us falls into one of those two categories. And if you are not aware of that problem, then you will always be the victim of it and you won't be able to change it. So kind of awareness is phase number one of remedying that situation. And for me, going through that healing process, I became aware of my inverted dopamine response, and I got the opportunity going through the therapy I went through to heal that part of my childhood that was at the root of that constant need for adrenaline and risk taking. And once I rewired that, that aspect of my life changed. And now, thankfully, I would say I have a normalized dopamine response where I get pleasure around saving money. You know, there's no more Ferraris, there's no more Porsches. There's an F-150 and a Tesla that are all paid off in cash. There's no debt. And then the second part of this is automating your behavior. So I would say that's piece of puzzle number one. Piece of the puzzle, money puzzle number two is removing yourself from the financial equation, because ultimately building wealth comes down to investing consistently over a long period of time into real assets. So if that's all you ever did, even just putting money into the S&P 500 and you never touched it, you will end up a millionaire if you've got a long enough period of time, right? Step number two. And if you're investing consistently. And so humans are not really consistent creatures, especially entrepreneurs. And this gets really hard for entrepreneurs because if you are a full-time entrepreneur, guess what? Our incomes are incredibly inconsistent, right? My income changes from day to day, week to week, month to month, and it's feast or famine, depending upon how I'm building my business at any given time. And so investing consistently, which is requirement number one, is really, really difficult because you have this large flux of money, and maybe you've got back bills that you've got to pay, or you've got this thing that you've been saving for, or you want to reward yourself because you just worked your ass off for 3 months and you want to go take a trip or whatever. Well, then now that money's gone again, and now you've got to go back into this process, but there's usually very little left over to then invest for your future. And when that windfall does come in and you have that opportunity to invest in your future, do you have the habit built and the neurology built and the discipline built and the plan built to then go say, yes, I'm going to invest that money in a 401k instead of rewarding myself with something that would be a heck of a lot more fun to do? And the answer for the vast majority of people, 90% of the time, is going to be no. And so as long as you are operating from these neurochemical urges and addictions as the biological, emotional beings that we are, it's going to be very difficult to invest consistently over a long period of time. So the solution to that is to remove yourself, and it's to use automation. And Dave Ramsey had the idea correct when he 20, 30 years ago came up with the envelope method of basically using envelopes to force you to keep a budget, to put every percentage of every dollar you made or paycheck that you got into an expense bucket, an investment bucket, a tax bucket, a travel bucket, whatever it may be. And it forced you to at least process that money in somewhat of a systematic way. And it also required an extreme amount of discipline that the vast majority of people don't have. So when we started this subject matter, I basically said, hey, Dave and Robert have had the blueprint for doing this successfully available to the world for 30 years. And why do 80, 90% of people still fail with these methodologies? It's because it requires discipline. And so the second big key for me was to automate this process, which you can do these days with a service called getsequence.io. And it is called, basically, it's a money router. It's $15 a month. It's a phenomenal platform that was inspired by Dave's books and his system. But it's brought up to modern standards, and it's completely automated. And so you connect your bank accounts and your investment accounts to this tool. And every dollar that I make through my merchant account, or it could be through your paycheck, gets routed through your GetSequence account. And then you set up if-then rules. And so for me, I have rules that say for every dollar that comes in, put 30% into my investment account, put 3% into my fund account, 3% into Michelle's fund account, put 20% into our tax account, put, I think it's 30 or 40% into our business account. And so every $100 that comes in, it automatically gets divided into all of those different bank accounts, and I never have to think about it again, right? So I've got 3% aside that comes in, and I can go spend guilt-free on a new gun or whatever the heck I want to go buy. We don't have to think about it. We don't have to have this family discussions about it. I never get behind on my taxes because 20% is set aside for that. And 30% of every dollar I make gets automatically put into our investment account, which then automatically gets wired into our brokerage account. And then I can go in my brokerage account and I can set up automated buys. Every day I could say, I want to buy $100 in Tesla stock, $100 in Bitcoin, $100 in the Ethereum ETF. And this shit can all happen every single day after setting this up over the course of an hour, and I never have to touch it again. So now I literally get a little bit richer every single day, and it requires zero willpower, zero memory, zero effort. zero anything. And even if you didn't go through years of therapy like I did to fix your neurochemical addiction, this takes you out of the equation and it just works like a machine for you. And so those two things for me have been the key to completely changing my life with money, changing thousands of our students' lives with money. Just helping them set up this process fixes 90% of people's money problems. And then at that point, you can start to get a little bit of a win every single day, meaning as these transfers comes in, even if you're still struggling to make money, I don't care if it's a dollar. If a dollar comes in, it's a positive reinforcement. You got a little bit richer today, and then you before you know it, I guarantee you within 2 months you're going to be shocked at how much money is in your investment account or in your savings account. And then you're going to be like, huh, this really works. And you start to get a sense of safety in your nervous system. That starts to create a little bit of a sense of abundance in your nervous system and in your mindset. That starts to create a little bit of a sense of confidence. And then all of that combines into this wonderful little formula that you can then take to your business when you're talking to prospects or whatever it is that you're doing. And now you're coming at that from a place of abundance and security instead of need and insecurity, which, as you know, Todd, whoever you're talking to can instantly tell from nonverbal cues which state you're coming from. And the
No
state you're
doubt.
coming from is all that matters. And so you can't fake that, but that process will change anybody's life. And that service is $15 a month. So,
Wow. So a couple questions. I'm like mind blown. What? So if somebody has got the inverted dopamine, which is the one that's like got to make it, spend it. Okay, now I'm super comfortable. I'm too comfortable. Now I got to get the adrenaline rush or whatever, which is probably a lot of entrepreneurs. Do we have to go to, I say we, do we have to then go to therapy for that? Or is it, can I still be that person? Like, how do, you got the Mark Weezer and you got the Todd Falcone and Mike Dillard, right? I mean, Mark is definitely on the other side of that equation.
mhm.
Uh, Guys like us and other entrepreneurs that love the adrenaline rush, all of that. Uh, what is the solution? Is the solution just, taking the time to
Yeah.
set something up like this and I don't have to think about it and it's just automated and that's it?
Well, there's different levels to this. Setting up the automation everybody should do, no matter who they are, and that will take you 90% of the path as long as you have the discipline to not go pillage that investment account, right? But I find that once you have that money building up, you don't want to touch it. For me, that there's always been a boundary there, and I think for a lot of people there is as well. The problem comes when you don't have a plan for that money and it's just sitting in your account. Your brain will find something to do with it.
Yeah.
And so for me, as soon as it gets sent to that other account, okay, it received its instructions. It's now doing a job over there. I'm not touching that money anymore. If you don't have that going on, then you're in trouble. Now, layer number one to this is awareness. So hopefully, having heard this conversation today, people can look at their lives and evaluate themselves and be like, oh, yeah, that's me. I'm in this category or that category. Now, if you have the inverted dopamine response and you're addicted to spending money in order to get dopamine, and again, buying food or alcohol costs money, shopping on Amazon costs money, buying a new laptop from Apple costs money, right? Do you want to go out buy the new Apple 17 this week? Are you getting like jonesing to go get that new thing because you feel compelled to buy something new to get the dopamine hit and the pleasure from that? Well, then, my friend, you have an inverted dopamine response. So, at the end of the day, what your brain wants is doesn't want a phone. It just wants freaking dopamine. It's a chemical addict. It doesn't care about the object, doesn't care about the car. And so what you can do is there's a couple of steps. First step, if you find yourself in that state, and we as men specifically have this OCD desire to go hunt things that we want. And I know you're like this too, Todd, where if I get a desire for, let's say, a new car or a new fishing rod or in your background, a new guitar, I will go spend hours researching that thing. I will watch every YouTube review on it. I will do it for fucking days or weeks at a
Yeah.
time. And I am stalking my prey, right? And that only ends in one way, which is me buying it. right? I will logically justify my emotional desire to buy that thing. It goes on sale, or it will help me make more money, or whatever the logical justifier is. And so how do you get around that? Well, again, you can hack your brain, and the cool thing is that your brain doesn't know the difference between what you imagine and visualize and what you experience in real life. We all know this. We've all been taught this. Athletes who visualize going through their moves and all of this stuff is just as effective as going out and practicing in real life. And so what we teach people is one, when you're in a moment of potentially spending a lot of money, maybe you've got your credit card out and you're about to enter it into a website for a significant purchase, is just go take a break, sit on the couch, and literally do 10 minutes of breathing, four, six breathing, 4 in, 6 out. Hell, do it for 5 minutes. What you're going to find is within 60 seconds of doing that breath work, you're going to find that your body switches from sympathetic hunt mode to parasympathetic, which is rest and digest. You're going to find that your saliva starts to kick in, your mouth is going to start to water. You're going to find that your body's going to start to relax. You're going to find that you're going to start to get a little bit sleepy. And that's again your body shifting from sympathetic to parasympathetic. And what you're going to find in that moment, in less than 60 seconds to 2 minutes of doing that, is that desire to go through with that action is going to stop. So what we're doing is we're interrupting that path in our brainwave that's been well greased and well oiled to make that transaction. We're interrupting that and we're stopping that, and we're starting to basically run in a new pathway, right? And so this is ending that neurochemical addiction process. It's interrupting that. And then the second thing that you can do is go a little bit deeper, and you can go through a 5 to 10 minute visualization exercise. And so you can close your eyes and you can go through and literally visualize buying that new iPhone. So picture going to the website, picture filling out the form, you're going through and you're picking the color that you want. And you want this to be as detailed as possible. The size of hard drive that you want, or memory. Are we getting 256 or 512 or a terabyte, whatever it may be? Are you going to buy any of the cases or accessories? And then you go through and you visualize entering your credit card information. You hit send, you hit buy, and then you see the thank you page. And then you kind of enjoy that moment. Oh, that's cool. I'm getting a new iPhone. And then you fast forward and to 3 or 4 days, and the doorbell rings, and you're like excited. You get to visualize that the delivery is there. You've got the box with your phone in it. You open the box. You see that shiny Apple case. You peel off the stuff. You pull out the case. We all know what Apple packaging feels like, right? You turn on the phone. You hear the little chime and the Apple come on. And then you go through the little pretty setup screen. And then you go through the process of setting up your phone. And you take in and enjoy the new form factor and how it feels to have this just shiny, bright phone without any fingerprints on it. And you go through that process and you really enjoy it. And then you fast forward another week, and then you picture pulling out your phone and looking at it. And now, how do you feel about that phone? Well, about a week later, it's just another phone that
It's the
looked
phone.
99% like the previous one that you had, and your home screen looks exactly the same. There's really not much difference to it at all that you can physically tell. And then you fast forward a month, and now it's full of fingerprints. The case has got kind of dust in, its things. You might have spilled some drink on it. And you just keep visualizing this process. And then you go out 6 months, and now where you are, you're like, I don't care about the phone at all. And at the end of that process, you can basically rewind all the way back to your point in time. And you could say, what I now at that moment of purchasing that phone, would I rather have the existing phone I currently have, excuse me, and $1,000 in cash, and you visualize that all laid out in your hand, or the new phone? And what you're going to find is you're not going to have the desire for the new phone anymore. Because as you were going through that visualization process of getting that new phone, you got to experience that dopamine hit that your brain was after, of making the purchase, of opening the packaging, of feeling it, of smelling it, of playing with it. You got what your brain wanted. And now, by bringing it back in time to what it really cost you, you can actually associate it to a negative outcome. Well, man, I could have just kept my phone, which is totally fine. I could have cleaned it up and shined it up and polished it up and had $1,000 in my hand and invested that into Bitcoin, which would be maybe worth $10,000 5 years from now. Which one am I going to choose? the answer becomes very obvious, and you're going to find that that literal physical need to go buy that object is gone. And so after you do that a couple of times, you're going to find that the desire is not going to be there anymore. And at the very minimum, you're going to be in control of it. It's not going to be in control of you. So,
Dude, I didn't even like I was kind of visualizing it as you were going through it and like
yeah.
because described it in such explicit detail. And I could see how already I'd be like, no, I'd rather have the $1,000 that turns into 10 grand because I put it into Bitcoin or whatever I put it into. That this has been like so enlightening for me because, bro, I am absolutely the inverted dopamine dude. And I'm thinking
Yeah.
as you're talking, I'm like, okay, that car, those watches, I've got
Yeah.
a watch collection that mostly sits in the safe. And I just, I mean, that
Yeah.
is me to a T.
Yeah.
So for me, even as the interviewer guy today, wow, big epiphanies, big ahas. And I mean, and it's interesting, like like Ramsey talking about the envelopes and all of that, uh, years ago, before I ever had my first LLC, because I was so afraid of the tax man. And when I started making money in network marketing, I think I had a DBA. It was Success Systems, which I never used that on a domain because there was too many S's in the middle. But I had, or no, it was either Success Systems or Income Accelerators. I've had different business names in the past, but I remember having an envelope, and I would take, it wasn't the money that would go in there, but it was an envelope that I had right here in my drawer, and same kind of, well, not same desk, but an L-shaped desk. And I would take, this is just how I did. I'm not telling you guys to do it this way, but I didn't have it. It was all, 1099 income. And I would go, okay, well, that's not all mine. If I got a check for 10 grand, a lot of people think that's like, well, that's all yours. No, it's not, because you paid no taxes on it. I would literally take 3 grand. So I'd take 30% of that check and I would deposit it into another account, which I never personally had the temptation to go, okay, well, I got this money over here because I
Yeah.
knew that was for the tax man. That worked for
Yeah.
me for a while.
Yep.
But this automated, can you say the domain again for this whole
Yeah. It's
automated process?
yeah. It's getsequence.io.
Getsequence.io.
Mm-hmm.
You can be rest assured I'm going to be checking that out immediately as well. And man, what a fun conversation. Well, I don't know. It it's always a pleasure chatting with you, brother. But I'm so grateful that you are healthy. And are you back at 100%? You still got stuff to work on? Where you at?
I'm going to say I'm about 70%. I've been able to get back in the gym for the first time once or twice a week for the first time in 7 years, I'd say in the last 4 months. Um, so that's a big milestone. Ironically, a year ago, I found out I had incredibly high mercury poisoning. So the interesting part is if you have mold toxicity or mold poisoning, you usually have heavy metal poisoning and or parasites as well, because when you're nervous, when your body and your immune system gets overloaded by one, then the other two just come in and proliferate. So yeah, going through the chelation process for mercury. Had my 16th chelation IV, so I've been doing that for the past year. That's really been the final piece of the puzzle for me, is figuring out that mercury component. Which, if you're above the age of 40 and you live in the United States, I never had mercury fillings. So for me, it was just from eating fish and sushi, much like Tony Robbins. Almost
Yeah.
took him out as well. If you live over the age of 40 in the US, you have uh, some kind of toxin overload in your body. It could be mold, it could be heavy metals, it could be parasites, it could be environmental toxins like glyphosate. Doesn't matter what it is,
Oh
you're
yeah.
just going to have that. And so, the best thing that anybody could ever do is to go to a good functional medicine doctor, take a toxin panel, and not find out if you have these things, find out how much you have in your body, and then start the detox process for them, because this is really at the root cause of all of the health issues that Americans have today. Even those of us who, try to eat healthy, where I've been eating healthy for the last 7 years, as healthy as you possibly can be. And Eating healthy doesn't remove this stuff from your body. It might slow down how much you're adding, but your body is a sponge, and every time you drink water or have a plastic bottle or eat at a restaurant or whatever it may be, you're literally absorbing more of these toxins that our foods are covered in. And you have to take specific supplements, basically in specific processes to remove them from your system. And everybody needs to do that, or it ends up in really bad places that are akin to our 18-wheeler truck analogy that we used earlier. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, I know you're an entrepreneur. So as we wrap this up, like, what are you up to now, like business wise? I know you can't be just sitting around doing nothing. So, you got
Yeah,
any
well,
cool
we have,
projects you're working on?
yeah, thank you, brother. So, I mean, there's two ways that I can be of service to somebody today. We have richereveryday.com. So, that's a $37 product, but it basically is 65 minutes and it will take you through a series of videos that will show you how to set up Get Sequence and how to set up a second service that lets you invest tax-free. So we didn't have time to get into that portion of it, but basically we show you how you can invest up to 140 grand a year into any asset you want, Bitcoin, real estate, crypto, and never pay taxes on your gains. It's legal. There's another new service out there that just started, like Sequence, that makes this really easy to do. Costs $50. Where in the past, when I set this up years ago, it was $5,000 and took about 6 months to set up. Now you can do it for $50 in about 30 minutes. So that's a
Wow.
Richer Every Day. And then we're all about teaching people how to build long-term wealth. So we talked about investing consistently over a long period of time into real assets. That's CLR. I call that clear. And we have an indicator that I've developed this year that I use specifically to help me accumulate the world's most valuable assets at the best possible prices. So what I'm trying to do is teach people, this current generation, how to become accumulators. How do you accumulate assets? And you have to be mindful of what assets you're accumulating today, because as you and I both know, we're heading into the age of AI and disruption. And frankly, we're all going to be lucky to have careers 5 years from now. As entrepreneurs, we'll figure out a way to adopt. But for people who aren't, they're going to be in a very, 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 very difficult position. And the only way to offset the disruption that is coming for the average person here in the United States is to start investing and owning the assets that are going to do the disruption. So specifically buying and investing in assets like Tesla, NVIDIA, and Palantir. That allows you to have ownership and an equity stake in this tidal wave of AI productivity that's going to take over the world. And if you don't have that equity stake, well, then it's going to run you over. I believe that investing in and accumulating specifically Bitcoin and the new financial network that the world is going to be based on allows you to offset and hedge against, once again, the disruption that AI is going to cause, because the current financial regime and system is built on human productivity and it's dependent upon human productivity. And as AI replaces those humans and those humans lose their jobs and lose their ability to produce revenue and pay taxes and all of those other things, governments are going to have really only one option, which is to print more money, to pay them unemployment or pay them a universal basic income or whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, the outcome of that is the continued erosion of the dollar's purchasing power. And the primary way to offset that is to accumulate assets like gold, silver, or Bitcoin. And so, how do we teach people how to invest smarter without taking risks? That's where the clear algorithm comes into play. And it's very simple. It's an overlay that you can run on any stock that you want in TradingView. And it's not meant to make you day trade. It's not meant for sophisticated investors, which I know you are. You're super skilled at that. It's meant for people like my mom and dad who just want to build wealth and they want to do it consistently and they want to do it conservatively. And you don't want to ride the next big market crash all the way to the bottom, right? Which is what most people do. You want to sell at the top, take your cash and buy in at the bottom. And that's what the algorithm was built to do for myself, first and foremost, because that's why I built it. And now we give people the opportunity to use that as well for any stock or crypto asset you want. And that is at clearalgo.ai. And so that's what I'm doing. Yeah, how I can
clearalgo.ai.
help folks. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. And just so you guys because I've made all the financial, well, probably not all the financial mistakes you can make, but plenty. Like I didn't know what dollar cost averaging was. So I go in, I'd be like, okay, 50 grand going into this stock when, you know, I probably should have put, $50 a week or $50 a day into it. I won't get into that right now. But you should absolutely check out the Clear Algo as well, especially if you're somebody who wants to acquire wealth. Mike and I had a talk about this maybe 2 weeks ago when he just launched that new indicator. And then you'll know if you don't even know what we're talking about, what's an indicator trading. I'm sure there's some of you guys are like, what's trading view? We won't get into that right now, but I'm sure you can get information at his website. But brother, so cool to reconnect with you.
Likewise, man.
And very different. This is like fun for me. Like I had a conversation, I don't know, a couple months ago with the CEO of BNI, and I'm like, hey, this is kind of fun. Like getting out of my space a little bit because I'm so ingrained in the network marketing community. I'm always talking to leaders. How'd you
Yeah.
do it? What'd you do? What were your biggest pitfalls? And yeah, we met through network marketing, but you've gone on to have an amazing career with all sorts of craziness. I do have one regret with you, Mike. The only,
Mm.
and I never told you this, my one regret is the time that you invited me to drive in the Baja 1000 on Patrick Dempsey's team, and I passed up on that opportunity. And
Yeah,
oh man,
that was
yeah,
fun.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure it was. I missed out on it, and that's a little regret. But you can't live life in regret. So anyhow, man, thank you so much, and
Yeah, this is
yeah,
super fun,
hopefully we get
brother.
to see each other soon, man.
Likewise. Would love that. Thank you for having
Yeah,
me.
for sure.
Appreciate you guys.
Appreciate it.